At my son's birthday party, in front of everyone I love, his fiance stood up, raised her glass, and said, "We don't even consider her real family." She meant me, his mother. I stayed silent. I smiled like nothing had happened. But when the speeches ended, I stood up too. I looked Brielle straight in the eyes, and I revealed something that made her face drop, and then crumble into tears. I had bought and just canceled the wedding venue of her dreams. Right there, in front of everyone. Brief pause, only a beat as the narrator tilts her head slightly, inviting the viewer into the full story. My name's Lena Morley. I raised my son Evan mostly on my own. We've been through everything together. Loss, hope, rebuilding. So when his fiancée Brielle humiliated me at his own birthday party, she didn't just hurt me, she lit a fire inside me I never knew I had. It was a warm, golden afternoon in late September when I hosted my son Evan's 27th birthday party. The sun slanted just right across the backyard. The tables were covered in navy and gold linens, and a steady hum of laughter floated in the air. Friends, cousins, neighbors we hadn't seen in years. Everyone was here to celebrate him. And, if I'm honest, to celebrate a little piece of hope. Hope that after everything Evan and I had been through, brighter days were finally ahead. I'm Lena Morley. I'm 54, a proud mother, and these days, a woman who has learned how to stand quietly in her own strength. I wasn't always like that. 2 years ago, we buried my husband, Evan's father, after a sudden heart attack no one saw coming. Evan was crushed. He was only 25 when it happened, just finding his footing in the world. I had to be strong for both of us, so I was. I carried the paperwork, made the calls, stayed up with Evan at night when the house felt too big and too empty. We were each other's anchors, which is why, when Evan introduced me to his girlfriend Brielle Stanton a year later, I welcomed her with open arms. I wanted him to build a life again. I wanted him to find someone to lean on, to love. At first, Brielle seemed polite enough. She was beautiful, long honey blonde hair, a laugh that carried across the room, a perfect kind of polished, the kind of woman who turned heads when she entered a restaurant. But something about her smile never quite reached her eyes when she spoke to me. Still, I pushed past it. Evan was happy, and that was what mattered, or so I thought. As time went on, little cracks appeared. Brielle rarely came to family dinners. When she did, she was glued to her phone or made little comments about how quaint our traditions were. She rolled her eyes when Evan hugged me goodbye. She criticized the old house Evan grew up in, calling it a fixer-upper with character, with that slight sneer that made the words sting. Again, I stayed silent. It wasn't worth it, I told myself. This was Evan's relationship, not mine. My job was to support him, not control him. When they got engaged 6 months ago, Evan was over the moon. He showed me the ring he bought her, simple and elegant. I cried, but it was bittersweet. Part of me felt like I was losing him, but a bigger part just wanted him to be happy. He even showed me their dream wedding venue. The glass terrace in Sonoma, elegant with towering windows overlooking vineyards that turned gold at sunset. Brielle was obsessed with it, but it was expensive, way out of reach for 2 young professionals. Without telling them, I called the venue manager. I put down the deposit myself, thinking it would be a surprise gift when the time was right. That's the kind of mother I wanted to be. The kind who made things a little easier, the kind who showed up. And so, when Evan asked if we could host his birthday party at my house, the old creaky fixer-upper filled with decades of memories, I said yes, without hesitation. I spent 2 weeks preparing. I pulled out old photographs, arranged fresh flowers from the garden, and baked his favorite cake, homemade carrot cake with cream cheese frosting. I even called his childhood best friend Jonas to come back into town as a surprise. That day, standing in the kitchen in my favorite blue dress, watching family and friends swarm around Evan, I felt full. I felt proud. And yes, a little bit nervous. because I noticed the way Brielle moved around the party, like she was auditioning for a bigger, grander life she believed she deserved. She wore a white silk dress and designer heels that sank into the lawn every few steps. She barely spoke to my mother, Marjorie, who had traveled 3 hours to be here. She kissed Evan on the cheek with a practiced air, as if checking a box. Still, I told myself, don't read into it. Today is about Evan. Focus on him. I spent most of the afternoon making sure everyone had what they needed. Refilling drinks, heating up the catered appetizers, introducing second cousins who hadn't seen each other since elementary school. As the sun dipped lower and it was time for speeches, I stood back, my heart swelling. This was it, the moment to celebrate all the years of late-night talks, scraped knees, report cards, heartbreaks, and victories that had shaped Evan into the man he was now. I didn't need to be in the spotlight. I just needed to be in the room. I had no idea what was coming next, and how, within just a few words, Brielle would take that love, that pride, that quiet happiness, and crush it under her heel. The speeches started with Jonas, Evan's best friend since they were boys. He was nervous, stumbling over his words, but he spoke from the heart. Stories about muddy soccer fields, high school heartbreaks, late-night drives talking about their futures. He said Evan was the brother he never had. The room warmed with laughter and soft claps. Next was my brother Graham, who gave a toast that made everyone chuckle, poking gentle fun at Evan's terrible taste in haircuts during his teenage years. Then my sister-in-law Denise shared a memory about Evan fixing her car when she was stranded one Thanksgiving, when he was just 16 years old. Everyone was smiling. I felt my heart swelling with pride, my throat tightening. I had done something right. I had raised a good man. Then Brielle stood up. She clinked her champagne glass sharply, so sharply that the chatter immediately died down. She didn't look at me, not even once. Brielle tossed her hair over one shoulder, gave a tight smile, and began. Evan and I are building something incredible together. A real life, a future we can be proud of. Her voice was sweet at first, but with every word it grew harder, sharper. When we think about who's truly family, well, it's about the people who are really there for us, who understand our goals, who support us moving forward. I felt my stomach twist, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe she wasn't talking about me. And then she said it. Clear, sharp, director. We don't even really consider her real family, no mistaking it. No question who her was. The words hung in the air like smoke. I froze. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room darting toward me, and then awkwardly looking away. My mother Marjorie gasped so loudly that a few people turned. Jonas, bless his heart, set his drink down a little too hard on the table, making it clatter. And Evan, my sweet Evan. He looked stunned. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He glanced at Brielle, then at me, and then quickly looked down at his shoes. I waited for him to say something, anything, but he didn't. I felt the humiliation burning up my neck, across my face. I could feel my hands trembling, could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had spent 2 weeks planning this day, 2 weeks pouring every ounce of my love into this celebration. And here I was, being erased in front of my own family. I forced myself to smile. Just a small, tight curve of my lips. I folded my hands neatly in front of me and stayed perfectly still, as if that would somehow shield me from the blow. Brielle kept talking. She thanked Evan's co-workers who had come. She thanked Jonas. She even thanked Denise for her wise words about marriage. But she never mentioned me, not once. I caught snippets of people whispering behind their hands, uncomfortable. A few averted their eyes when I caught them looking at me. Marjorie glared openly at Brielle, her hands gripping the arms of her chair like she might stand up and cause a scene. I stayed seated, smiling, silent. I don't know how I did it. I just knew that if I spoke now, if I tried to defend myself, I would be giving Brielle exactly what she wanted. I would look bitter. I would look small. And I am neither. The speech finally ended, mercifully, with Brielle wrapping her arms tightly around Evan's waist and beaming up at him like a woman who had just conquered new territory. Evan gave a small, uncertain laugh and kissed her on the forehead. The moment passed, and chatter picked up again, though the energy in the room had changed. The easy, joyful buzz was gone. Now there was tension tucked into every corner of the backyard. I excused myself quietly and went into the house. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter, willing the tears to stay back. I would not cry over this. I had survived worse. I made myself a cup of tea, the familiar motions soothing me. Kettle on, tea bag in, wait for the water to boil. I stared at the pale blue tiles of the backsplash my husband and I had installed years ago. And as I stirred the tea, a calm, icy thought settled over me. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to do something far more powerful. And Brielle would never see it coming. I stood there in my kitchen, one hand loosely wrapped around my mug of tea, feeling the warmth seep into my skin, grounding me. Through the window above the sink, I could see the party still going on. Evan was laughing at something one of his cousins said, and Brielle was standing right beside him, her arm tucked into his possessively. The woman who had just tried to erase me from my own son's life. I thought back to all the times I had swallowed my pride for her. Every missed invitation, every backhanded comment about our humble home, every time she corrected me when I called Evan my baby, saying in that clipped voice, "He's a man now, Lena." It hit me then, with stunning clarity. This wasn't a one-time slight. It wasn't a mistake. It was a warning, a glimpse into the future if I stayed silent. If I said nothing, if I kept the peace the way I always had, I would be slowly pushed further and further out of Evan's life. Until one day, I'd be a guest at his holidays, a visitor to my own grandchildren. A nice, polite afterthought. Number not today. Not for this. I set my tea down and picked up my phone. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. I scrolled to the contact list and found the number, the glass terrace. Months ago, Evan had shown me photos of it, his face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen since before his father died. He called it their fairy tale venue, the vaulted glass ceilings, the endless rows of vineyards, the candlelit stone courtyard for dancing under the stars. I had wanted to gift them that dream, to show Evan, even without his father here, that someone still believed in building dreams with him. At the time, Brielle had gushed about it, showing off pictures to her friends. But she had no idea that behind the scenes, I had pulled every favor I could, called in old connections, and paid the outrageous deposit to secure the date they wanted. It had been a gesture of love. Quiet, unconditional love. Now it was going to become something else. I pressed the call button. After 2 rings, a woman answered brightly. "The Glass Terrace. This is Elise speaking. How may I help you today?" I took a breath, smiled a little. "Hello, Elise. This is Lena Morley. I'm calling about a reservation under my name for September 10th next year." There was a brief pause as she typed on her end. "Ah, yes, everything is still on track. Final payment due in 3 months. Are you calling with any updates?" I felt the weight of everything, the betrayal, the years of sacrifice, the endless aching love I carried for my son, settle into my voice. "Yes," I said smoothly. "I'd like to cancel it." Silence. Then a startled, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Just to confirm, you understand the deposit is non-refundable?" I smiled into the phone. "I understand." I imagined Brielle's face when she found out. The crushed disbelief, the scrambling, the realization that money and appearances couldn't buy everything. Not loyalty, not respect, not family. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. Elise confirmed the cancellation and sent me an email for record keeping. I thanked her politely and hung up. I stood there for a moment longer, letting the finality of it sink in. Outside, the party was winding down. Evan was hugging relatives goodbye. Brielle was still glued to his side, laughing loudly, tossing her hair like she hadn't just detonated a bomb under our family table. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress, and stepped outside, feeling lighter with every step. I knew people would talk. I knew some would say I was being petty or cruel. But I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it to protect my place in my son's life, and to remind everyone, including myself, that dignity and self-respect are not gifts you hand over just to keep the peace. Sometimes you have to reclaim them, even if it means setting the entire table on fire. The speeches were over, but the night wasn't finished yet. I could feel it, the low electric hum of unfinished business in the air. People were starting to gather their things, saying their goodbyes in small clusters. Evan was making the rounds, hugging cousins, shaking hands, thanking everyone for coming. His cheeks were a little pink from the champagne, and his smile was wide, but a little tired. Brielle, of course, was standing beside him, holding his hand like a trophy she wasn't planning to share. I sipped the last of my now cold tea and placed the cup down on the patio table. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady. Sure, this was my moment. I stood up, smiled warmly, tapped my own glass. Just once. Softly, but with purpose. The chatter quieted immediately. A few guests, probably still a little uneasy from Brielle's earlier comment, turned their attention to me warily. Jonas straightened in his chair. My mother leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch for a beat longer than necessary, commanding the space without ever raising my voice. I just want to say thank you, I began, voice calm, steady. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate Evan. I turned slightly to my son, locking eyes with him. His face softened. He still loved me. That much was clear. Watching Evan grow into the man he is today has been the greatest joy of my life, I continued. And seeing all of you here to support him reminds me just how strong family can be. I let the word family linger just a second longer. Brielle shifted uncomfortably, but tried to keep her face neutral. Family, I said, is built on love and respect. It's not always perfect. It's not always easy, but it's real. I let my eyes flick briefly to Brielle and back. A few people caught it. I could see the tiny spark of awareness begin to ignite around the circle. Speaking of love, I said, voice light, almost playful now. Evan and Brielle have an exciting future ahead. A wedding to plan, a life to start. Brielle's face finally broke into a genuine smile, sensing, perhaps, that I was about to offer her a public olive branch. She had no idea. And it brings me so much joy to know that I was able to contribute to the beginning of that dream, I said. You see, several months ago, when Evan first showed me the pictures of the glass terrace, Brielle's eyes lit up. She glanced around proudly, as if waiting for the applause. I secretly made a few calls, pulled some strings, paid the deposit to secure their dream wedding venue, as a surprise gift. A few people gasped softly in delight. Brielle clutched Evan's arm, beaming, and then I smiled wider, a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. But after hearing some of the speeches today, I said, my voice still as smooth as silk, I realized something important. The air shifted again. Everyone knew something was coming. If I'm not considered real family. I paused, looking directly at Brielle now. Then it doesn't feel right for me to be part of the wedding plans either. A murmur swept across the backyard. Evan's eyes widened slightly, confusion flashing across his face. Brielle's smile faltered. So earlier this evening, I said gently, I canceled the reservation. Dead silence. Brielle's mouth dropped open. For a moment, she just stared at me like she couldn't process the words. The venue, I clarified, tilting my head slightly. It's no longer booked. I made sure everything was properly canceled. You're free to make other arrangements, of course. It hit her fully then. Her face crumpled. Her hands shook slightly where they clutched Evan's sleeve. Tears welled up in her perfectly mascaraed eyes. And just like that, she broke. She let out a loud, choked sob, turned on her heel, and bolted into the house, her heels clacking wildly against the patio stones. Gasps echoed around the backyard. A few people exchanged wide-eyed looks. My brother Graham gave a low whistle and muttered something under his breath. I simply picked up my cup again, took a slow sip of tea, and sat down without another word. Evan stood frozen, torn between chasing after Brielle and staying where he was. For a long moment, he just stood there, the reality sinking in. Finally, he muttered something to Jonas and jogged toward the house, calling Brielle's name. I stayed seated, feeling the warm weight of my family's eyes on me. I could feel the shift, the subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement that I wasn't the villain here. I wasn't the one who made today ugly. I was simply the one who refused to let it happen silently. And for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful in the best, purest sense of the word. The sun had dipped behind the trees, and the backyard looked almost ghostly in the twilight. Only a few half-empty glasses and crumpled napkins remained, silent witnesses to the storm that had passed through. I stood in the doorway for a long time, letting the night air cool my flushed skin. Inside, somewhere down the hall, I could hear Brielle's muffled crying. A door slamming. Evan's low, urgent voice trying to soothe her. I could have gone after them. I could have apologized, tried to smooth things over, but I didn't. I had spent too many years apologizing for existing, for wanting to be part of my son's life, for trying to hold our family together in the wake of devastating loss. Tonight, I chose something different. I chose myself. I cleared a few plates off the patio table, the ordinary movements grounding me. I loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters, stacked the leftover carrot cake neatly into containers. It felt good, almost ceremonial, like I was wiping away more than just crumbs. I was wiping away years of biting my tongue and shrinking myself to fit into someone else's idea of family. About an hour later, I heard the soft creak of the floorboards behind me. I didn't turn around. I knew it was Evan. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke, his voice quiet, heavy. Mom. I turned to face him. His shoulders were slumped. His face looked years older than it had that afternoon. She's upset, he said. Really upset. I nodded, waiting, not rushing to fill the silence. She said you embarrassed her, that you tried to ruin everything. I studied my son's face, the boy I had raised into a man, the boy who had cried into my shoulder after his father's funeral, the boy who had trusted me with his dreams. Did I? I asked gently. He opened his mouth, closed it again, ran a hand through his hair in frustration. No, he said finally, voice cracking a little. No, you didn't. She was wrong today. And I should have said something. I didn't know what to do. I walked over and put my hand on his cheek, just like I used to when he was little. He leaned into it instinctively. I know, I said softly. I know it's complicated. We stood there for a long moment, the quiet stretching between us, but this time it was a good quiet. A healing one. You taught me to be kind, Evan said, but you also taught me to stand up for the people I love. I forgot that today. I smiled, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. You remembered it now, I whispered. That's what matters. Later, I learned that Brielle had insisted they leave early. They didn't even stay the night as planned. She wanted to put distance between herself and what she called my little display. I didn't fight it. I didn't chase them down or beg them to understand. Because the truth is, real family doesn't need to be convinced. Real family shows up, even when it's messy, even when it's hard. In the days that followed, Evan called me more than usual, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to sit quietly on the phone together. He didn't say much about Brielle, and I didn't ask. Some things he needed to figure out for himself. What mattered was that the door between us was still open. And it would stay open, as long as respect lived on both sides. That was the real gift I gave him on his birthday. Not a party, not a deposit at a fancy venue, but the reminder that love without respect isn't love at all. It's obligation, it's control. And I won't live like that. I don't regret what I did, not for 1 second. Standing up for myself didn't destroy my family, it protected it. And it taught me once and for all that setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away. It's about making sure the people who stay are the ones who truly belong.